Hi, and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 131 after my holiday break, and I decided to give myself a little treat after holiday and have a guest, and not just any guest. We have Ekil, who is going to learn a lot about his own personal data, and we are going to learn a lot about how he interprets his own personal data. So, welcome, Ekil, and of course,
Hello, hello.
thanks to my sponsors in mtgazone.com. Thanks to all the patrons. Thanks to all the people that actually did coaching with me last week. I had like 3 sessions and it was fun. So yeah, that's still available. And with that, we can move to the introduction of our guest. Ekil is a prolific streamer specializing in only limited. I don't think I ever seen him stream anything else.
I played a bit constructed, but usually when the qualifier weekends are there, not on stream.
Get 4,000 gems, move on with your life.
Something like that.
He's also a member of Draft Lab, a really neat community of people who like to draft. That includes the 4, famous 4. It's week 3 of the 4, but I picked the archetype with the lowest win rate from 17 lands and claimed that this is the best thing to do, and usually being right. Who is there? J2S Josh.
Florida Man, Iki.
Josh. Iki, of course. So there's a bunch of really dedicated, limited players with their own Discord. So I might put it in the show notes if you want to join, because there's a lot of limited talk there, and it's for free. So that's a very useful place to be. I'm there just to post my trophies that I'm proud of. You know, I post every trophy on Twitter, but only the good ones on the Draft Lab Discord, because I know that there's high level of scrutiny there, so I'm not just going to go with your run-of-the-mill deck. I'm going to put something that I thought was special.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're one of the players, when I watch your streams, and I do that, well, not as frequently as I want, but frequently enough, you are extremely detailed in your decision-making and describing how you are going to play something. And it's like high-level streaming in terms of you don't think about like making it easy for everyone. You go like full decision process, and it's like super detailed. Sort of Ben Stark does it sometimes, and that's always nice to see. Also, like super attentive to the deck building. You are mainly playing best of 3, which is, I think that deck building considerations in best of 3 are much more complicated than in best of 1. So that adds the extra layer of things that can be easily translated to paper. Despite you not playing paper, I think that best of 3 prepares you for that the best.
It does. Yeah. I mean, I play paper sometimes, like limited drafts and things like that. I have like a weird approach when it comes to drafting. Maybe if you did watch the beginning of the drafts, I usually have like my way of drafting and how I approach it, like looking at the pack. And like people are always asking me, why do you remember cards, or why are you giving that much on like remembering it? And I'm telling them always, like, if I'm drafting on paper, like I don't have I cannot use a phone and take a screenshot of the pack. I gotta remember it as much as I can. So yeah, but to like say a bit, I try to like explain as much as I can. Sometimes I don't like explain everything, but I usually tend to like talk about my lines and about like decisions when I'm waking. And I always love like to discuss things, because like I think when you discuss with other people, you can like learn from other ways of like thinking as well. So sometimes chat teaches me as well, which I kind of like.
It's always good that once in every year there is one day when chat is right, and that's a beautiful day. There is a question in the chat: which country are you from?
So I'm from Serbia.
And that's why also you're here, because I decided that we have to promote the Slavic nations in limited, as there are so many of us, and actually, especially the former Yugoslavian bloc is really strong in limited, because you also have Luka
Lola and the 4 currently as a streamers, but there are more like really strong limited players here.
I think that streamers are just a reflection of a strong limited faced community. No, I mean that's really the reason. Like Poland was always constructed, and we have Canister because of that, and we used to have Grzegorz Kowalski, but limited not so much. I had to move away from the country because of that. They banished me for playing too many drafts. Okay, so what are you hoping to get out from looking at your own data? Because different people have different reasons.
That's an interesting question. I think I would like to learn a bit about myself, like data-wise, like statistics. But I think like I'm looking at this as like some sort of a fun thing because like I did tell you before, I'm not a person that like is looking lately in the data. I'm trying like to figure out the things on my own. So I would like to see percentages maybe where I'm right on it, and maybe where the data is gonna tell me, oh, you're an idiot, you should be doing this, and I may be stumbling with it. So
Like,
I guess the thing that I would love to get is maybe looking at the data a bit more, or you convincing me to look at the data a bit more.
So we had a bit of a chat before we went live on the stream about it, and Ekil told me that he's not a strong data believer, and I told him that it's absolutely reasonable from him to not be a data believer, because I think that the closest your win rate in best of one at least is to 65%, the less you're going to get from data, because the data doesn't capture your level that much. The closer you are to 50%, you get an amazing benefit of using the data, because probably when you're at 50%, you have issues with card evaluation. If you're 65, probably you don't have issues with card evaluation. So one level falls off. If you are at 50%, you probably are much better captured your ability by the average data. If you're at 65, not so much. So, if you're at 50, you probably want to do the strategies that other people tell you. If you are 65, you probably are more creating your own strategies, and you're actually building how limited is working, whether you're sharing it or not. But you're a streamer, so obviously you're sharing your ways of thinking. And this is why I made the joke about the 4, who always claims that the worst deck in 17 land is the best deck and then proves it's right. It's because he is not bound by inability to play certain strategies. And I do a lot of analysis comparing different win rate levels of players. So I look at players that have 50% win rate and players that have 60% win rate, and I compare which cards do better in the hands of the 60% win rate players, like disproportionately better. And I see like set after set after set, blue is doing way better in the hands of the best players, and like white is doing better in the hands of the weaker players proportionally, because blue strategies require tight play, require good sequencing, require putting your deck together without any flaws, really. And you're capable of doing that. So data is not going to tell you that, how exactly to build a perfect blue deck. Data is not going to build a perfect Sam Black deck, because to play a perfect Sam Black deck, you need Sam Black to pilot it, or someone with
you need his mind.
Skill. Yeah. So, and to build the 4 decks, you need the 4 mind. And the 4 mind is pretty powerful in terms of how to play limited. So that's the issues that you're going to... And if you want to play Jason ILTG's strategies, again, it's useful to be Jason. And you cannot capture that with data. However, we can capture some of those things with your personal data, because your personal data is not tainted by the, scrubs like me putting their games into the data set and ruining the analysis. So this is only you. And I think that the usefulness of the personal data is to maybe catch yourself on wherever you have some sort of bias, or wherever you have a place where you think that something is good, but then the results show that it's not so good, even if you play it. And we all have those kind of things. Like, I'm sure that I had really, really bad win rate in this set with the looter, the blue one, the rat. It's a great card, and I didn't check my own data, but I have like deep feeling inside that if I looked at my win rate with this card, it would be pretty low, because I had like a bunch of decks where I had it and it didn't work very well. So probably it's going to be bad. And I'm sure that you have cards like that you thought that they were great, but you actually have a weak win rate with them. So we're gonna learn about it in a second. So, I didn't change the dates. I changed everything except for dates, but the dates that you have is from the 2nd of August to the 2nd of September. That's what I should have changed. The rest is correct. So you played 42 drafts that I got the data from, all in best of 3. That made around 300 games, 298. You drafted 1,636 cards that we logged. And your win rate in that time was 72.8, which is, even for best of 3, that is really high. So it's probably like the equivalent of 67, 66% in best of one, which is above the top player tier in 17 lands. And you've drawn 5,020 cards roughly, and that equivalent to 9 kilos of paper that you lifted virtually over that time, if you would convert it to the actual cards. So you did some heavy lifting this set. Although, as you said before the stream, we were aiming at 50 and you just didn't make it because you only draft on stream, which is even more impressive that without gaining extra off-stream knowledge, you are capable of getting that kind of win rate. How did you like the Bloomburrow, by the way?
So at the beginning, I was okay. I mean, it did remind me a bit of as like a core set. It had like a core set vibe, like M set. And then at the beginning, I didn't like it that much because, I don't know, it didn't feel like that deep. Drafts were like a bit harder than I think they should be. But later on, I kind of enjoyed it more and more. So I would say that more that when the drafts were like getting a bit better, when you were like realizing how to like navigate drafts and how to approach the drafts in this set, the gameplay and like enjoyment of this set did go a bit up. Because usually people tend to say about this like synergistic sets is that they get cut or they end up with a weak deck or something like that, and that like influence them on like maybe not liking the set. But this set is like really beautiful when you realize how to draft it, I think, because like there is definitely, even though there is like 39 playable cards per draft, you still have enough to make a good deck, I would say. And if you just read the table, because I'm like as you did mention, Ben as believer, I kind of like tend to do that as well. I try to draft the hard way, in a way that like figuring out what is open and trying to end up there. And I think this set really rewards that. If you can like figure out how to put yourself in a good spot to have a deck. So when it comes to this set, like I said, I didn't like it at the beginning, but I think it had to do more with me not understanding the draft. But when I did understand the draft, and I guess when other people did understand the draft, because like that impacts your likement as well, I liked it more. So
I had exactly the same journey. So I never start low on a set. I always am optimistic, but it was like fine. But actually, over time, I started liking it. For me, it was mainly that I think that the set is designed in such a way that you have those 10 main archetypes, you know, the bats, whatever, birds, raccoons. But so often I'm drafting a deck and I'm like, I'm white, blue, tempo, aggro, go white strategy with spell synergies. And it's a different deck than birds. And maybe not many people are drafting the tempo spell synergy blue whites. And then you got like talents, which are knights built around. So I think that there's way more archetypes than 10 that are valid.
Yeah, definitely.
But they will come together very rarely. And it's fun to find the lane to end up in one of those archetypes, which I think added fun to me. And yeah, again, it's not as good as Ikoria was for me because I really liked Ikoria, but it has the same feeling of there are very unique archetypes that will come in once in 100 drafts. And when you know the cards and when you understand them, you can spot the moments when you can go for those archetypes and try to draft them.
Gotta ask you about the numbers. I see the dates. April 16th.
No, yeah, the dates are wrong. Yeah, I said
okay.
I didn't change them. No, it was 2nd of August to 2nd of September.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm always doing it based on the previous guest so that I have the same structure. But because of that, I will sometimes have like weird things, like it will say that it's Thunder Junction or whatever.
I see.
I always forget something. That's like almost part of a plan to have a stupid mistake in there.
Yeah, to see if I'm paying attention.
Well, definitely. So we're going to start to look at the draft portion. I divide this presentation normally into the draft portion because obviously different skill set. And the second is more play portion. So we're going to look at the individual card performances. And here we're going to look at your strategy in drafting, which I think is more interesting from the content creation perspective. Gameplay is obviously more important in terms of winning 72% of the game's perspective. But for people listening, it's probably more important to understand how you approach draft and how you do things differently than others. So we're going to look at the most drafted cards, most made the dex cards and cards that you take frequently when you see them. So we're going to look at some of those.
I think I know that one. The third question.
Well, we'll see that. We'll see. So, okay. Every time I blank it, I ask the question, then you can think about the answer. And once you have like maybe a couple of examples of cards, then we can move to the graph and actually see what it was. So first one is, which cards do you think you drafted the most from commons? And
okay.
Each list has 10 of them. So yeah, if you give me like 2 commons that you think you drafted a lot, you can guess.
So there was a week where I was really high on Rakdos because like Rakdos wasn't like being drafted. So I would definitely say the 1/1 lizard was there. I would at least think the menace one, because like usually when I was playing them, there were like 4 or 5 copies in the deck. So I would assume like if I did do like 5 drafts and there are like 4 to 5, like that's already 20. And
smart.
Second one, let's see. I mean, it depends. I played a lot of different archetypes. I usually try to like experiment and not be like, oh, I'm just gonna be biased to frogs. But I think like I would say the 2-mana draw card was there, and maybe take out the trash. So okay, I would say those 3 cards.
Let's go. So your top drafted common was Fountain Port Bell.
Okay, makes sense. I didn't think about that.
It does make sense. But Ravine Raider, which is the 1/1 menace, is second, so that's well spotted. Do we have Take Out the Trash? No, we don't have Take Out the Trash.
Interesting.
We have a bunch of rubbish things that you're speculating on, probably, like Sazakab's Brew, Bellowing Crier, not the tier 1 cards exactly. A lot of Dire Downdraft. And my guess would be this is something that happened mainly in week 1. So maybe you don't remember it.
Yeah, I think it was. Week 1, I had like decks which we had like 5 of those cards in the deck. Or I had a 2/4 Mythic, the Sultai one, and that one allows you to play 4 mana cost spells. And I played like 5 of those because it was like a 3 mana to play from top and its interaction. So yeah, I guess that would explain it a bit.
So any cards in the list that surprise you?
Brawl definitely not, Raider not, Bell not. I mean, I didn't think about the Bell. Bell is just like an out included in most of the decks. The 3 Masquer is something that I would not expect.
It's probably, the fact that you drafted those cards does not necessarily mean you played them. And we're going to see that in a second, whether some of them were played more frequently than the others. But how did you like Bumberflower's Sharepot, by the way? Did you ever play it, or did you just speculate on it because it was
I did play it in a decent amount of decks. I really liked it with the Builder's Talent. That's where it did shine the most. Obviously. And I didn't hate it in the green-black. But usually when I was like, there were decks where you're like missing interaction or where you have to board it in. I kind of find that card a decent sideboard card because like it deals with anything. It is expensive interaction, but if you have to deal with a talent and you don't have like in Rakdos enchantment removal, there you go. There is a card you spend 1 pick and you already have like interaction. So I would say like from 20 there that maybe 10 were main deckable. The other one maybe weren't being played. Or like early in the draft, you just like take it like pick 9, 10, 11 and just put it in the sideboard. Maybe it ends up on being played if you're lacking removal.
Yeah, that's one analysis I didn't do. Which card you sideboarded the most? Maybe after the stream we can actually quickly look at it because I think I can quite easily extract your sideboarding strategies for the people in the chat. Okay, same but with uncommons.
This is way more harder, I guess. So uncommons.
Because uncommons you don't have
I have an easy one.
Of picking them.
I think I have an easy one. I always did pick the Anthem effect, the 3 mana artifact whenever I did see it. The one where you choose a creature type +1/+1. Especially
you didn't pick it every time you saw it. I know that for a fact.
Maybe if there were 2 of them in the pack.
Maybe that was the reason.
Talent, I would say most likely the golden cards. I would say like if I'm like Rakdos, for example, the 2/1 was a high pick for me. And then I'm like trying to
remember. Banner and some talents and signpost. That's what we're guessing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like the first ones that do come on my mind. I might be wrong, but
Patchwork Banner, ding ding ding. Your number 1 picked uncommon card.
That is the Anthem effect one, right? Where
Yeah,
you choose okay.
That's the mana rock that gives the Anthem.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Crab, Shoreline Looter. I think that this is the result of them going late and you speculating on them because you're drafting the hard way. Flamecash Gecko, exactly the signpost that you mentioned, so that's correct. Long River Spool. I didn't even know that it's a uncommon. I thought it was a common all
It's
my
a
life.
2-mana counter that just goes really late.
Yeah. I just thought it was a common for some reason. I don't know why. Rabbit Gnaw. That's probably the same as with Shoreline Looter and Eddie Crab. It's a really outlying strong card in red that probably was passed way too much too late. Hazel's Nocturne. Any thoughts about this card?
The 4-mana return 2, right?
Yeah, that's
I think that card is really great. I mean, it works in most of the black decks. Like, I'm trying to remember in which decks I would not want to include it, but I think like if you're like a low to a ground aggro and that's like a top end spell, it's a really good one. You can like take a turn off, refill your hand, you're dealing the damage on the way. If you're playing squirrels, you return key cards. If you're playing bats, you're triggering stuff. If you're playing black blue, like it usually ends up on being played in black. So
black blue fills graveyard easily. So
yeah, exactly. So and it's an instant. I think that's the biggest upside of it. Like you're holding things up while you're like seeing if you can like do that to like return the tempo. And there are like cards where if you return them, you just win the game.
That's true.
I would not be surprised that it is here. 10 maybe, and some other uncommons that I didn't take, that is a bit surprised. But I would maybe think the 2-1 Rakdos one, because like when Rakdos was open, you were wheeling those ones. The mentor, I don't know the name of the mentor, but all of them are mentors.
I know. I locked my opponent once with those because I realized I'm not going to win on damage, and they had 3 of them on board. So I just said, "Yeah, go on attack, go
deal
on,
the damage.
Go on. I'm going to mill you out with those." And indeed, that's how the game finished. You can fly close to the sun with those if you have multiple copies.
Yeah. And the mage is the one that does ping. That one was really going late in most of my drafts, and
the tight color mentor is the Dimir one.
It's the Dimir one.
Yeah, this is the Dimir one. This is the Rakdos one.
Yeah,
no, the Flamecash. No, this is the Gecko.
The Gecko is the draw discard. I mean, you get the Rakdos mana, and you couldn't play it in any red deck. The Gecko is really good. Mentor, I'm a bit surprised, but yet again, like
I think the Dimir one.
Dimir is the most open color, and like if I'm that one in some decks, I was ending up on splashing it, so it doesn't like surprise me in a way.
Coruscation Mage, I never managed to make it work, but I've seen it being annoying on the battlefield a couple of times from my opponent. So I still have something to discover in this format, and I think red is the color I drafted the least in general. Not that because I didn't want to even. It's just like I never got those late take out the trash like some people do. Allegedly every single time.
Actually, I had a deck where I was splashing them, and they were a huge success. I was like Dimir base, and I was splashing red because it had bells, and like it's easier to splash. And I had 2 of those, and those were the like top end way of winning the game with the Eddie Crabs and other spells. So like Grixis spells with the Nocturnes as well. Like that was a good deck where Nocturnes were okay.
Okay, so of course there is a difference between drafting a card and then putting the card in your deck. Like often you will speculate, you're drafting the hard way, so you're dirtling most assuredly. But some cards will end up in your deck more frequently than the others. So what do you think which cards that you drafted almost always make the deck? And we're talking about cards that you picked more than 10 times. Because of course, you picked the Season of Loss, you put it in your deck once, it's 100%. I don't want that kind of data in my data. So those will be probably mainly commons and uncommons.
Okay, so definitely if I'm like picking lizards highly, I'm playing them. So I would say the 1/1. I would say the 3-mana artifact because I was picking it like as a first pick. It's a good build around. I would say Gecko every time. I think not every time. Like I was maybe sometimes speculating on red because I see it late. But I would say Gecko being one. How many more do you want me to?
Yeah, that's fine.
3.
That's fine. So we have some of them. Patchwork Banner.
100%.
100%. Uncharted Haven, you made 100%, obviously. That also doesn't surprise me at all. A Nocturnal Hunger, that was a bit more surprising. But I guess that if you're picking black removal, you're probably going to play black because you need to pick it highly. So if you don't pick it early, you don't pick it at all. So
That
if
is
you
the
pick
3
it,
mana
you
one
probably
with a
want to
gift,
play.
right?
That's the 3 mana murder that either pings you for 2 or gives them a food. Surprise card that I saw on the list was the Agate Assault, the 4 damage exiled creature sorcery. You put it, but probably also this is the same story that you only picked it when you played red, and you didn't speculate on it because this is not good enough card to speculate on.
I think like it's a card if I'm like ending in red. That's one way of dealing with the problematic 4 toughness stuff, or artifact removal actually ends up on mattering a lot. Like assault is an amazing way of dealing with a talent, the red one that makes a sword. Like you can shut down their talent by just destroying an artifact. You don't need to deal with a creature, kill their artifact, and they don't have a double striking haste creature anymore. But as you mentioned, when I'm red, I'm actually happy having 1-2 copies of it in my deck, maybe even 3 if I'm like lacking stuff. And I guess in Izzet, why I maybe like it is because you can discount it. So it doesn't surprise me, I guess, that much that it was this highly played. But I would maybe think it would be a bit lower. So I guess like few of them I didn't play because it's not 100%.
No. Luther, I'm also surprised that it's so high because on one hand, I know it's a strong card, despite my shortcomings with playing it. But on the other hand, I would expect you to speculate on it often, and then when you speculate on something, sometimes it will not end up in your deck. But this one, 93% of the time that you picked it ended up in your deck, which probably means that you picked it like 13 times and 12 times it made your deck or something like that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it depends on like when it's happening, but if it is happening early on in the draft, and if I see looters, those are like a good signature cards that you should not be seeing. Like looter for me is like one of the great ways to like jump into blue. One of the stronger cards, I would say. It does a lot for the mana you pay. It's like a threat in the late game. It's a value card in a set which is dirtly, even though maybe I'm not sure. Like I didn't check the data how like fast is this set comparing to others, but I think it's
very fast. But
really?
I also didn't find it very fast.
No, I think it's like most of my games. I think we go to like turn 10 plus. I mean, personal feeling, but it doesn't have to be true. Maybe a best of 3 thing comparing to best of 1. I could see that being a thing as well.
That I can probably easily check. Give me a literal second. I can tell you what is the average time that your game lasts. Scrolly. Number of turns. Boom. 8.5.
8.5 is really high, right? For a set.
That's okay. But you have a lot of like long games in there. So I think it's like more like double distribution, that there's a bunch of aggro decks that are really quick, but there are also dirtly decks that go for like
ages.
14 15 turns, and I can see them in clumps in your case, so that there's like definitely different types of decks that you get. Let's go back. Where did I lose my presentation? Come on. I am a bit surprised also on Hidden Grotto, because I didn't put Hidden Grotto that often in my deck.
That's a surveil land, right?
Yeah, that's the surveil land.
I'm trying to like make an assumption why I was looking at that highly, but I think like usually one rule that I did have in this set comparing to others was that I didn't mulligan a lot. I tried to mulligan as least as possible. And Grotto, when you think about it, early on, it might make a difference between a keep or not because you get an extra look on the top. But I guess it wouldn't make the difference on why I did play it or not. I think in general, like in this set, there aren't a lot of double pip cards or cards that don't have like a lot of 2 color, and you have the bell as well, which helps you on like making sure your mana is good. So having a land that can do the surveil, allows you to like splash while you're taking bells. You can take one grotto or two, or like maybe more. I don't know. It's another way of like splashing some powerful cards. Like I don't know, for example, the Dimir Rat, the 3/4 for 4 mana. Don't know the names. I'm not really good on names.
I noticed.
Yeah, and surveilling is huge in a way that like there are decks that do like cards in graveyard, right? So I'm not like surprised. I tend to put it in the decks, and I don't feel like it's punishing you that much that it is not giving a color. In a way that like sometimes even if you spend one more mana to cast a spell, you did cast a spell, and like surveilling, in my opinion, it's a good ability to have with a card selection.
Someone was talking about like fetch lands and surveillance, that basically that's like casting a free consider. And there's exaggerated, of course, but there's something with it. And by the way, Hazel's Nocturne 90%. So you are way higher on that card than the community. And I have to say, I'm high on that card in terms of like I like it. But somehow, if I have it, I want to play it. But it's hard for me to have it because I always find something that I need to prioritize over it, and that's why I rarely pick it. So I didn't get to play a lot with it, unfortunately.
I'm not sure how many Nocturnes I ended up splashing. I think there were some cases where I was splashing Nocturnes as well.
That's interesting. And obviously, like, Intrepid Rabbit, I understand why you like the card. It's good.
That's a 3/3 one, right? That's 2 times trigger.
3/2 rabbit that makes a rabbit and +1/+1.
Oh, okay. That's not the other one.
That's the one. The other one was something host. You see, if I see the name, I know what it does. If I don't see the name, I don't remember it.
I'm good with the pictures. I see a picture, I know what the card does. But with the names, like, I mean, to be fair, like this set, a lot of mentors. How do you know which one it is? Like, I think every golden card is mentor, and they're like,
yeah, that doesn't help. That doesn't help. But okay, this is the graph not from you. This is the graph from Paul Cheon, who was my last guest on this episode. And it shows the percentage of cards that were played when picked. And when you notice it, he had a ton of cards that he always played. And then like a lot of cards that he almost always played, like up to 80%. And that to me indicates a certain style of drafting. Like he had like very precise plans. And again, it might be different because of the different set. Maybe OTJ was the set where those archetypes were more like rigid and you only picked a certain core amount of cards and the rest of them were supplementary and you just put them once in a while. This is the same graph for you. And even though you had fewer drafts, he had 80 something. So obviously the sample size is larger. But even with only 40 drafts, you only have 3 cards that you played always. So you're much more picky. And then the shape of Paul Cheon's graph was something like this. Well, yours is more like this and then this. So you have like a slow decrease to a certain level of around 50%. And then there's just like a drop. And these are the cards that you maybe put once or twice and you never pick them and stuff like that. So you are much more selective about which cards you're putting in terms of you are more open to diverting from the sort of like rigid archetypes. And I'm wondering, do you think of yourself like that you're going to make every deck is a different creation and it doesn't have that much linkage to everything else that you played before?
Well, I would think when it comes to this, it would maybe do with the approach. I'm trying my best usually to not be married with my picks, right? Me taking it doesn't mean it's going to be played. So even if it means dropping your whole pack 1 into garbage and like realizing pack 2, this is the lane, I'm going to try to make it. And then I guess this graph would make some sense because like if you take the 3 mana banner, which is a card, is colorless and anthem effect, it's going to end up in no matter what you play, right? Same goes with the bell or I don't know, like other cards. But I would maybe think something like this would go with my style of like how I'm approaching the drafts and all.
All right, we have also the almost bins category, which are the cards that you drafted at least sometimes, but you never put them in your deck. And I have a list of 6 cards that you picked at least 4 times, but you never put them in the deck. And the highest number is you picked the card 9 times, but you never put it in your deck. So I want you to think about maybe, and this is always the hardest one because you remember what you put in your deck. You don't remember what you didn't.
If I remember one, I'm gonna be proud. I'm trying to remember which cards are shitty in the set.
Oh, there's so many.
They are. You know, like the monkey with the things he's hitting. That's happening in my brain now. Like I'm trying to think, but nothing is coming.
That's why I love those games. Especially that you don't remember the name, so you have to come up with what the card does.
What the card does? Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna know the name. I'm like trying to figure out the colors. Oh, 1 mana blue flicker, a frog, but I played it. I think I played it once.
That's
one blue card.
I know which one you mean. Splash something.
I know I picked it a lot of times, but I think I never included in any of the decks.
I think it's not on the list.
It's not on the list.
Splash Portal, that's the one. Thank you very much, Alamek.
Maybe I played it once, or I bought it in once.
Probably. I think I only remember the top hit. It's a common. The top card that you didn't put in your deck is a common. I can give you the color if you want. Does it help? Yeah. It's red.
It's red and it's common.
Mm-hmm.
How much mana does it cost? I'm kidding. I cannot.
Cheeky.
Which red card I would never include in my deck, but I drafted it a lot. I cannot remember. Sorry.
It's not like that. Look, you drafted it 9 times, but you never put it. Okay, shall we reveal?
Let's go for it.
Are you giving up? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm giving up.
Conduct Electricity was the card.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I put it like probably a couple of times in my decks when I needed to, really. Because I sometimes found like I'm playing a red deck and they play like the 2/3 when you forage, you put a counter on it, and I can't kill it after 1 forage, and I feel very sad about it. But Waterspout Warden is another card that you never put. The 3/2 frog that gains flying when you cast a creature. And Frilled Spark Shooter, that's the lizard that is a 3/3 menace reach, but when you cast it after damage has been dealt. Yeah. I'm surprised that you never played the Tangle Tumbler. I thought that maybe even once you will try to, experiment with the card. I played it yesterday.
I think the card is amazing when you can put it in the deck. But I think I never had a deck where it is just like a good card to put it in. I'm surprised with the Jolly, to be fair. I think the card is amazing, especially if you build around it.
But I also often have it that I pick it speculatively and then I never get the crumbs and I just I don't have anything to gift, so it's just a vanilla 2/3, which is not terrible, but it's not amazing. I trophied on the FNM yesterday with a blue-white bird, and I'm actually saying birds because I had Kestrel and I had 2 of the mentors and I had the swan and I had a mockingbird, so they were proper birds. But I also had a bunch of offspring things, and I put the Tangled and a couple of carrot cakes, and I put the Tangle Tumbler, and it was one of the MVPs of the deck because I was putting counters on my flying birds, and the opponent couldn't deal with that because I had so many flyers. So
did you have a defender talent?
No, I didn't have any talents. I just had mainly I only had creatures in the deck.
Offspring creatures, yeah.
Just creatures, offspring and carrot cakes, yeah.
Yeah. Electricity, definitely a card I boarded in, I think, a decent amount. I don't like putting it main board because I think it's pricey for what it does. Other red removals, I think, are more efficient.
Yeah, it doesn't count the sideboarding. So, yeah, you might have put it in the sideboard, but you never played it main deck.
Warden, I'm a bit surprised. I think I played it once, but it might have been best of 1 or sealed. As you did see, I played a bit best of 1 at the beginning.
I even got your best of 1 data, but there was maybe 2 drafts, so I didn't include it because it would only make the data more chaotic. Dire Sight, you never were tempted to play that card?
I played it like this week. I played it main board one.
So, okay, but I didn't have the data from the last couple of days.
But makes the 3/3 mana reach makes sense a lot to me. At least the way
you don't like it. You just want to have your curve at 3.
I'm okay with it, but the way I'm like looking at Rakdos, if you're not going dirtly with the top end, in top end maybe, but early to the ground and like I like my creatures to like maybe end on 3. I would not want to include it. There are more powerful like other ones that I would play over it. Maybe even the 4 mana 4/2 Otter that does give you a card from top, the exile one. I would play over it.
5 mana flyer that
that one as well.
Yeah, okay.
I would play it over this one.
Okay, and then there's the most difficult category to figure out. The ones that got away. There are 3 cards from the main set that you've never seen in a draft. Oh, and of course, I didn't change the name. It should have been Bloomburrow, obviously.
Yeah.
But 3 cards, and 2 of them are mythics, and 1 of them is just a regular rare, and you still didn't see it ever in your draft. Now, if you get 1 of that, good on you.
So mythics. I think thing is, before this, I think you're gonna have a season, the green one. But I did see it this weekend. So, but maybe that now.
No, there is no season, if I remember correctly.
Okay, but okay, interesting. Because I know that, like last stream, it was my first time playing with a green season. So I would say
it's not even playing; it's just seeing it during the
draft. Yeah. But
maybe,
I think
maybe you've seen a green season like pack 3 sometime.
Something, and I didn't pay attention. Yeah,
exactly.
Makes sense. Which mythic or rare? I don't know. This is really hard. I'm trying to like remember all the mythics, and that's the 6/6 snake. Maybe definitely. Is it that one?
I think that's one of them.
Okay.
Shall we check?
Okay, let's go.
I'm absolutely sure that the snake is one of them. Okay. There you go. You actually never seen Scrap Shooter, the 4/4 raccoon that destroys artifact or enchantment when you gift.
So if
maybe that's why I never played Gerbils.
If you had a data from this week, Beza was in. I had a sick Beza deck.
Oh, cool.
And I had the Beza and the Black Talon that does give you the food.
Oh yeah, the scout. And then the card is such a great build around, by the way.
And with Beza, it's amazing. Like I milled the opponent a lot of time because you return the Beza, you sacrifice like 2 fishes and a food, you turn Beza, get 2 fishes, like whatever else, and it was really a good grindy deck. And I did pick a Scarp Shooter as well this weekend. I did include it, but it was in the sideboard. I was telling Chad that I don't want to play at main board. And some people were like, there you go, how much I hate this set when Ekil is putting this rare in the sideboard and he doesn't want to play it. Because I was like, it's just a 3 mana 4/4. It's not doing anything in my deck other than like killing artifact and enchantment. I would rather board it then. So I was interested in more playing cards that do have synergy with a deck rather than just like a powerful 3 mana 4/4 rare that is hard to pass. But I ended up main decking it. Chad did convince me, and it actually won me some games.
I mean, 4/4 is big in this set. That's something to be said. That their creatures are relatively small, and that 4/4, especially when you have just putting 1 counter on it. Like Beza, I played it once, and in my deck, I generated so much value in my deck that I never got any bonuses from Beza because I was always ahead on cards. I was always ahead on board. Which is not a bad place to be, but that meant that Beza was mainly like a 4/5 vanilla creature. And it was still good because 4/5 is such a big creature in the set. The 5 toughness is just, you feel like, well, what's killing it?
No, that card is sick. That
surely not conduct electricity because no one plays it. So it's safe. No. But yeah, these are the 3. There are 4 of the special guest friends that you've never seen. I know you've never seen Sword of Fire and Ice. Which probably 1 card that you actually would want to see.
The 1 mana exile a creature game.
Swords, you didn't see the swords.
I mean, it would be more fun for me to do. Can you guess the name of the card that you didn't see?
You never seen Ledger Shredder, and there was one more card.
Yeah.
And there was one more, but I forgot about the one more.
I don't even know what are the special guests. I'm like surprised that they're even putting those things. But one thing that I want to mention here, if I ever did see a Viper, I would maybe consider on splashing it with the amount of bells and other things. But when you look at the other two cards, they're double pipped, so I would never even include to splash them or anything. So it's interesting that I never saw Bez or Sharpshooter. But Viper, I did face a lot. I'm gonna give
good. If you can't kill it, you're pretty much dead.
It's really interesting that I did remember that I never saw it. I did face it a lot, but I never saw it in the draft.
Because you wanted to see it, probably. That's the reason. Okay, so now let's look at the snap picks. And these are the cards that you've taken almost every time that you saw them. And by almost always, in terms of commons, it's more like 30% of the time, which is still a lot because, you open pack one, pick one. You don't always pick a common. So you pack 3, pick 1, you're in the wrong color. You're also not going to pick that common. So 30% of the time picking a common is quite a lot, actually. So what do you think are the commons that you were picking frequently?
I definitely think the Brawl was there, the 1-mana green fight. I think every time in green or like I'm like considering on ending up in green, I'm definitely taking that. What would be other ones? I'm trying to remember every golden card, like signature, like Squirrel 2-3. No, I don't think I would be taking that one. So Brawl, I would say definitely one of the higher ones. Bell, maybe? No, Bell. I think not Bell. Bells were late. I would say just Brawl for now. I think Brawl should be on the list, but I might be wrong. There we go.
But you only took one guess, but it was a very good one because you took the Longstock Brawl 50% of the time you've seen it, which is insane. Why do you like that card so much?
It's interesting because I think, like you said, 1/1 counters in this set when the things are small and they're like evenly sized. 1/1 counters can make a difference in later parts of the game. And like it's not hard to set up or early in the game where opponent doesn't have mana, like they are curving out. So if you're gonna give them a fish and you get like a bigger size creature and you get the attack through, it's a good way of passing through. It does do decent job of what the green is trying to do, and it's an efficient removal. Even though like of course there is a lot of downside. Bite spells or not bite spell. This is a fight spell. It's easily to interrupt, but like it being 1 mana and leaving a counter up while you're giving them a fish and you don't really care about the fish most of the time can be efficient. And I would say like during the draft, even if you don't end up on playing the Brawl or you don't end up in green and you're maybe liking removal, you could still splash the Brawl. Like if you have the 3 mana artifact, the one that I'm also taking highly, that immediately allows you to splash the Brawl. So I would say the reason why I was taking it is if I'm in green, I love it. It is one of the best removal. If you're not talking about a talent, it is. You're not taking Polyvelop in every deck. One card I actually know the name.
Because the name is so peculiar. I think that there's just a memory phenomenon. They give people a list of the names, and there's like chair, table, apple, Ghostbusters, fridge, and everyone remembers Ghostbusters for some reason because the name is so catchy.
Yeah.
Polywallop is also a catchy name, so I think it's easy to remember. I look at this list, and again, Agate Assault is there. So you not only played it every time you picked it, but you also picked it quite a lot.
Yeah,
Turns out you're a secret lover of Agate Assault.
Maybe, but I think it has to do more with early on when I'm like soft forcing a lane. If I'm like trying to cut a color, I'm gonna take a good removal, which most likely will end up in being played.
This is something I want to touch. Longstock Brawl, take out the trash, Agate Assault, Banishing Light, Bumbleflower's Sharepot, and Nocturnal Hunger. So we got what, 6 of the cards on the list are removal? 5? 6. 6 out of 10. So you really value removal highly in this set. And this is not something that, you will hear in content creation about Bloomborough, that this is a removal set. But for you, it was, clearly.
I think in general, I value removal maybe higher early on. And early on, if you have removal, you can later on take some other cards to fill in the curve. Because if you check that slot, like removal slot, if you know you did take early on, then it might allow you to take some more flexible picks later on. Like I'm missing a 2-drop or a 4-drop. There is an amazing removal. Oh, but I have already 4 removals that are okay. Now let's not take that removal. Let's see what am I missing more, right? So maybe it has to do with that. I think early on, like pack one, I am most likely taking like I said, brawls and other stuff if I'm gonna like evaluate or like switch or whatever. Like removals are a good way to make sure you can switch to another color as well. If you see a lot of removals are wheeling and you're like wondering if you can switch or not, making sure you have removals, and then like you do the switch, you can switch to a new color. You already don't need to take removals. They were already maybe wheeling. Let's make sure you take creatures and you might get the removals on the wheel again. Like I have seen a lot of assaults on wheel. I have seen a lot of, I don't know, brawls being late, which I don't think it should be. I think it's a really efficient removal for 1 mana. Of course, easy to interrupt, but if you put yourself in a spot where it's not gonna interrupt you, or you made your deck in a way that they're not gonna be able on interrupting, or maybe you're just cutting it in the game, that could maybe even work.
Yeah, that's peculiar. I mean, I honestly stopped drafting green a lot in the second half of the format. Not because I didn't want to, but because I never was in the right seat, I think, and just like didn't see good green cards because people started drafting green. That brings me a question from the chat. What is your order of color power for the set?
Color power?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like which color you think is the strongest, which one is the second, whatever.
So I would say green, white, black, red, blue. I would say. For more like thinking about it.
So that's very similar to the chat. I'm more with Rosemary Tea. I thought that black was the strongest, and then I have like green and white sort of together in the second spot, and then I had blue and red.
My issue with black is that black is great when it comes to like interaction, but the creatures are dependent on the what type of deck you're making. So there are a lot of good creatures, but they only work in one shell. And like thinking about the common ones, there isn't like one common in black creature that I can think of and be like, oh, this will go in any black deck. Like for example, if I'm playing lizards, I want to play
3/2 Death Toucher. You mean
3/2 Death Toucher? I didn't play it in any of my lizards deck, I think.
Oh, okay, that's true.
I would, and that's the thing about the black white. But comparing to other ones, green, white, every good white creature can go in more like the 3/2 bunny that is Offspring. You're gonna play it in any white deck, I think. The carrot cake you're gonna play in most of the white decks. The green one, the brawl, you're playing in any deck. I don't know. The harvest, I think you might be playing in any deck as well. The 3-mana artifact that makes a food depends on the deck, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like there are more.
I still think that like green, white, and black are quite close to each other, and the other ones are slightly behind. But I thought that black was like solid and was way deeper, I think, on the uncommon level. And actually, uncommons in black are very universal in terms of where you put them, because you put Wix Patrol everywhere. You put all the removal in black. You put the Thoughtseize Lizard in any deck.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is a mythic uncommon in this set for sure.
Great.
I was thinking more when I was like creating the colors. I usually start with like with the bottom. Let's see the commons, and then like I'm rating on the commons, because like commons, maybe not lately with Magic with the new boosters, but in past it was like if commons are good, the color can be good, because you could end up with a common deck in past. Like lately, because there can be a lot of uncommons, I guess it's not a thing, and
it's still the same number per card, because even though you have more uncommons in the pack, there are also more uncommons in the set. So in the end, the average stays the same. So you only see 0.9 on average. So roughly like one copy of each uncommon per pod.
Interesting.
And commons, they went down from 2.4 commons of each common per pod to 2.25. So not a big change actually, because they removed 20 commons and they put 20 more uncommons.
That I didn't know that. I mean, I never paid attention to like how are they building the new
I'm
sets.
the data guy. I have to.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I would love them to include again, I think that's really missing in the new Play Booster era, is that common color packs. Like this was in past. Like there was every color in common slot.
Yeah.
I think they should be doing that still. I think
Mm,
that's like a big miss that they're not doing that
I
anymore.
think so. And maybe, they could skip the Modern Horizons because there is multicolor commons there. But if you don't
Hmm.
have multicolor commons in the set, they should put a copy of each seeded.
Hmm.
I agree with that because that added a bit of extra reading in draft.
Exactly. I'm really missing that. That was like one of the best information in past that a lot of people didn't know.
I still
And
think
like
that they have to have at least 4 colors per pack of commons.
that is true. I think like
So if
now,
you see 3, then you know that one of the 2 is missing.
but I think now the golden cards can represent a color. Like for
Okay.
example, if there is a dimmer one, it is either is representing the black or the blue,
Okay.
even if there is a single color missing.
Yeah, I'll have to read that up on that one. Punt Profit, obviously. A Trigger Duo. Great card, isn't it?
Hmm.
So let's move on to the uncommon snap picks. What do you think? Which card that you mentioned a million times might be there on the list?
Okay, I'm not gonna mention the obvious one. Talent. I think I did the green one. I did include
Hunter's
a
Talent.
lot. I did include a 2/2 Totsis Lizard a lot. I did include a 2/2 Discard Dude a lot. Looters a lot. You did. I did see looters. So I guess looters would be the cards I did pick a lot.
Shall we check?
Yeah, check. I think
You gave, and obviously the patchwork banner. We know that you
yeah,
put it
I
in.
didn't. I didn't want to mention that, but that's an obvious one.
And as I said, I remembered very specifically that you didn't put it every single time
Uh-huh.
because it only has. No, you didn't pick it every single time because you only picked it 90% of the time. You saw it 20 times and you picked it 18 times. So there you go. We have Fel, we have Hunter's Talent, we have Flamecash Gecko, Shoreline Looter, Thoughtstalker Warlock, all the cards that you mentioned, basically. On top of that, Feed the Cycle, Rabbit Gnaw, Eddie Mercrab, Wix Patrol. And this is like a very comprehensive list of really busted uncommons.
Uncommons, yeah.
I think that one thing that this may be a bit surprising, you don't have any white cards on that list.
I think there isn't really a busted uncommon in white. Well, there is
Harvest Right Host, the 3/3 rabbit that draws a card when you put 2 rabbits.
Yeah, but you gotta be in rabbits, right?
Yeah,
and not every deck can be playing. I mean, you can still include it because it's a 3/3 vanilla.
You will have carrot cakes and intrepid rabbits in every white deck. So
actually had this debate, I think last stream, where not last, but last week, where I did include it with only one more copy of the same card and 2 rabbit cake, and people were debating with me. Is the 3/3 mouse that does untap a permanent because it's a pseudo vigilance better than the 3/3 with an upside with a draw card? And we were like debating why do we think one is better than the other one is.
I'm pretty sure that like generically the Harvest Right Host is a better card. I'm sure that there will be decks where the mouse is going to be actually better, which is I mean, I think that the mouse is not absolutely terrible. It has its spots.
It is a vigilance creature. Like, depends on what your deck is doing. If your deck is like Dirt Lily and you don't care about the attack, I could see like vigilance mattering because you can attack and you can make sure you're blocking. While the other rabbit is more like pushing you to go aggressive in a way that you're gonna attack more because you don't want to miss that pump, right? You did play it. You wanna attack with a creature, and then like we were making like a cases on why I like this more. Like, I don't know, I had flyers, I had ways of drawing a card, I had a rebirth that can return 2 cards, so it immediately triggers a draw and stuff like that.
Well, you can have the possum that puts counters on itself, untap it, put a counter, untap it, grow it faster. It can be a mana dork, even the mouse. You attack with
I said that as well. If I had a banner in the deck, I would play a mouse over the rabbit because I can untap the banner. That's like 1 mana source more.
Okay, well, let's move to the least drafted cards. And I always I made a game, but I decided to skip it this time because I was running behind time. So you will not have to guess many cards that you pick the least, but you're still gonna guess what cards you basically didn't like. But I give this hypothetical example. If there would be a worst card ever printed ever in the Magic set, and this card is like 12 mana, 5-color legendary creature, that's a 1/1, and if you draft it, you lose the next 3 matches. It's a terrible thing to pick because by drafting it, you're losing the draft. You're basically 0-3ing it. So you would never want to pick it. But you actually would pick it 12.5% of the times that you've seen it. Because no one would pick it. So if it's opened in the wrong part, you will get it as the last card. And this is like the baseline for the worst card in the world that no one wants to pick. But some cards you will pick below those 12.5% of the time. And if there are cards that you pick below 12.5% of the time, it means that you think that the card is bad, but the rest of the world doesn't.
Okay.
So they will pick it, but you won't. And I think that those cards are interesting because that shows where you differ from the rest of the world in terms of evaluating some cards in a different direction. We know from the previous slides which cards do you treat as really good ones, but now we're going to have a bit of maybe an insight of which cards do you evaluate lower than the rest of the world. And my example for cards like that in the past, there was this period, like a year, 2 years ago, when pacifisms were really bad. But people picked them very highly. And there were sets like Zendika Rising, I think, when there was this pacifism. And I think never picked it because people were picking it so highly that even if I wanted
one...
It
was a 3-mana one, if I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it leaves a creature and it leaves a party member still on the board, so it's not like it was still like doing things even though you were killing a creature.
Yeah, but sometimes I even wanted one, but I never managed to pick it because I wanted it like pick 7 and I never got it pick 7. And that was my disconnection in that particular set. So what do you think that cards like that are for you in Bloomborough? Cards that you never picked because the community evaluates it so much higher than you do.
I would say maybe the people would maybe be taking some rares, or they would be maybe trying some rares that I would never play.
I don't think that they'll be rare mainly because the numbers wouldn't be there. So I think that's going to be mainly commons and uncommons.
Commons and uncommons. Because I was thinking maybe the red talent. I could see somebody like the draw discard one.
Oh, the gossip talent.
Yeah, I could see somebody like thinking, oh, this one can be great.
No, that's surveil.
The ones that I do look low and people are high on them. 2-3 uncommon bird, maybe, because no, but I picked it as well, but I played it in one deck. But I guess you gotta be in that shell to play it. It's a hard one. I had
Okay, let's go straight to the
okay.
Moonrise Cleric is your least drafted card. You only picked it 3% of the time. Which means that's the black-white hybrid 2/3 that gains a life.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Rabbit Response, that's the +2/+1 to the team. I guess that you were not often in the rabbit archetype, which also explains why Harvest Right Host was not a highly drafted card for you. Druid of the Spade, that's the 2/3 that gets +2/+0 and trample when you have a token.
Yeah. Okay.
Water Spite Warden, we had it, you never played it, and you picked it very rarely, the 3/2 frog. Dire Sight, Frilled Spark Shooter, that's the 3/3 lizard that can get a 4/4. Pileated Provisioner, the 5-mana 3/4 bird. Yeah. Starlit Soothsayer, that's the 3/1 bat.
Uncommon. That gives a surveil,
yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that is the surveil bat. Yeah, that's the 2/2 that gives surveil. I thought about the 3/1 that gets a creature, but no. Finch Formation, that's the bird that can come up with another bird and gives flying to something.
Okay, yeah. I think I never played one, yeah.
And the Rat's Hood Duo, that's the 3/2 that can get +1/+1 and trample to something when you expand. So these are the cards that... And I'm mostly interested here in Moonrise Cleric because you played... If I remember correctly, you played black-white quite a lot, but you didn't like that 2/3 flyer?
I think the issue... I mean, I don't have an issue with the card. I think the card is okay. not bad at all. But I would not play it in any deck other than black-white. And in black-white, it's hard to see black one. I mean, I would not take that card and be like, this is a signature card to think that black-white would be open. So I would say that maybe that has to do with something. Like if I'm like trying to find a lane and I see other cards and I see the 2/3, I'm not gonna take a 2/3 unless I know I'm ending up in black-white. And if later on I do realize other people maybe would be taking it and I would not see it on wheel. So Cleric for sure for me, I think there were just other cards I would maybe include more. Or like you have a lot of other 3-drops and you don't end up on like taking it.
So I think that this might be one of the data sort of showing that you might have had a leak in your strategy. I think that you probably underestimated the card a bit. I think it's better than you might be thinking. And I think that we're going to move later to the archetype win rates, and there's a bit of a spoiler. I think that black-white was the one that was not particularly beneficial for you, and maybe undervaluing the Moonrise Cleric was partially the reason. By the way, thanks to Ben Warney for the raid that happened some time ago. But I just noticed that it was there because I focused on the guest. But Ben Warney, obviously Mr. Metronome from the Lords of Limited fame. So thanks very much, Ben. But I think that this is like from the data that I looked through so far. I think that this might be what your personal data tells you about one private leak of card evaluation where you
that I should look higher.
could have evaluated slightly higher. I told you before the stream that I looked at the data, and one thing that I looked at the data of which creatures most commonly attack on turn 5, and this one was one of the top creatures that attack on turn 5, which means that it has good attacks on turn 5 despite being a 3-drop, which is something important in the bats because it cushions your life while it's attacking. It triggers the synergies. I think it's a very important card for the archetype. And I know that you played the archetype, well, like it was not your most popular archetype, but one of them.
Yeah,
you played quite a lot of white-black, but you didn't play a lot of the Moonrise Cleric. And I think maybe you evaluated slightly too low.
And maybe to answer Rabbit response, usually when I'm like trying to go with a go wide decks, the Rabbit response is usually a card I try to have one of. And if I can, I would maybe want to make a deck without it. In a way that if I need a perfect scenario for that one to work, I would rather try to add another card that can help me in other situations where I'm behind. Because that card isn't really the best when you're behind. If you're going to like try to block with everything and then use the +2/+1. So maybe that's why I'm not like looking at the go wide pump spells that high. And I think I didn't have many green-white drafts as well.
We're going to see it in a second, so that's not a problem. You'll learn exactly how often you played the green-white. I mean, and by quite soon, I'm like literally we're going to look at that now.
Right now.
So we're going to look first at your win rate in time, then a bit about your color preference. Then we're going to look at the color win rates, and then we're going to look at individual card win rates. So before that, a bit of maths, because I have to calculate your average win rate. And the problem with the win rate is that you either win a game or you lose a game. So if you make like the win rate, you go from 100% to 0% based on your wins in a single game. In order to make it a bit more orderly, what I do is I take a window. Here, the window is shown as 10 games. And then I make like an average of those 10 games. And then you move by 1 and you make an average of this one and this one and blah, blah, blah. And you move
and
on,
so
like
on,
one by one.
Okay.
And then from this kind of chaotic graph, you end up with something like that, which is a bit more coherent. You can see that there was a drop, increase, drop, increase. Yep. And I'm going to do that also with your games, but I'm going to take a window of 50 for your games. So I take 50 games, how much you won, and move it by 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Okay.
So we can get a graph of your performance over time by looking at the last 50 games that you played. So How did your confidence play develop during the format? What do you think is your winningest period in that format?
So I would say at the beginning I was doing bad, like I said, because of the hard time realizing the draft. But I think after the Arena Open, there were 2 times Arena Open for this set. After the first Arena Open, I was doing a bit better. Because I think I did realize the set a bit more on like how to approach it and everything. And like Arena Open is a good place where you can see how others are doing and like if you're maybe having a bad approach.
And
because
I did this. I did this analysis of the data of good players several times already, because like last time I had Paul Chion, I had Alex Nikolic, I had Sam Black, and I see the same trend every single time. Slightly lower win rate in the beginning, and then it goes up sort of, and usually it sort of drops off at the end. And let me just remove this one here, and then we can go back to the slideshow. And it's exactly what happened with you. So you had like a slightly lower win rate. You went as low as like 65% win rate. Pathetic, absolutely pathetic. And then it was a big increase, and you went up to like 85% win rate across 50 games, which is acceptable, I would say. Probably like you cannot complain about it. And then you have a sort of like a drop off towards the end, but you are like in a solid 72% win rate in those times. This is best of 3. So if you are, as the listener/viewer, used to the best of 1, you probably should like drop it by 5 percentage points. So the 85% peak is more like 80% in best of 1, and 65% in best of 3 is more like 60% in best of 1, which is still great win rate. Just to give people a nice.
This is winning games or matches?
This is winning games. This is winning games.
Okay.
Yeah. Because just doing the analysis on the matches is such a pain.
Yeah.
It's an immense pain from the perspective of doing it in the from the data set.
So I had at 1.85% winning games. That's a lot. I would say that's not possible, to be fair. I think a lot of variance was there for sure.
I mean, you have 72% average win rate. You will have peaks and you will have bottoms. So that's what happened. So I guess from what you described, this was not really surprising how it looked like. Maybe the level of it is surprising, but I mean, it's exactly like you said. You had a weaker beginning. This is the time you spent learning the format, I guess.
Yeah,
and figuring out interactions. And this is the moment when you capitalize on that. And I think that this is important for people to understand, because I know so many players who are the opposite. They have a high win rate in the beginning, or maybe not as high as you, but I mean, that's the whole point. And then it drops off as the format continues. And I think that this is a symptom of a different approach towards the set. This is a symptom of the players who early in the format, they force the best thing available because it's open. And later in the format, they cannot, and they feel lost because
they don't know to adjust.
And I was always a big proponent of this approach. Look, it's okay to lose in the beginning if you learn from that and if you understand the format on a deep level. And you're going to capitalize on that in the later format. When those people who are depending on, rabbits and squirrels are busted, I'm going to continue drafting rabbits and squirrels till the end of the format. Well, no, you're not, because 2 weeks in,
comes in.
Everyone knows that squirrels and rabbits are good, and that's it. You're not going to find open lanes to that. And if you only learn that, you're going to be struggling in the late format.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like you did describe early on, I'm trying to like figure out what's happening. Like not only learn from your mistakes, but like learning from what is opponent doing and what can actually win the games, and like seeing how, like, that's the beauty. You're like seeing how your deck plays, and you are paying attention to how some cards play on the opponent's end. And then like it's not only important to realize when it was good for them, like you lost a game, this card was busted, whatever. It's important to realize when they were putting a bad card maybe as well, and in a way that, oh, I see your deck. This deck seems amazing. I think it would win more games if you didn't include this, this, and this. And then you try to make their deck when you're drafting next time and trying to actually make it work.
That's one thing I'm doing quite a lot in the early format as well from 17 Lands. And it's not strictly looking at the data, but 17 Lands also has the trophy decks. And if I'm struggling with an archetype, I just go to the trophy decks early in the format and I'm looking through the lists and I'm just checking, okay, what went here? Okay, this one has 17 bombs. Yeah, I understand why that went trophy. But this one is built on commons. And it's built on commons I would never put in my deck. I probably have to start thinking about those commons. And then, of course, I realize it's the 4. But that's a different story. But that's how I approach the format in learning. Like, even without spending, thousands of gems to lose, you can do a lot of that by just looking through trophy decks of other people and figuring out which are the ones that are common based, which means that they are sort of abusable in the future when people are stopping to, get the most busted version of the most busted deck consistently. Because that's also why your win rate might be lower in the beginning, because you're trying to draft fair decks at the full range of the format, while you're going to be playing a lot against people who are abusing the lack of knowledge in the first days and getting like absolutely busted week 1 decks that you will never ever get later in the format. Yeah. So here comes my art analogy. So Pablo Picasso, the painter, famously had different color periods of his art creation. There was the blue period, there was the rose period. And I think that same goes for every single format that a prolific drafter plays. You might have moments when you are drafting more black. There are more periods where you're drafting more blue. And I want you to sort of evaluate, how did it look like for you in this? Did you have your blue period? Did you have your black period?
I definitely had I think beginning of the set, I was mainly doing frogs, so blue-green, I would say. And then I definitely had a lizard period. And I would say later on, I had some squirrels. So I would say it started maybe green, blue, or let's say it's one color. Let's say early on I was maybe doing mostly blue, then I was doing mostly green, and then at the end I think I was doing mostly black. I would say that's like my personal.
Okay, so I mean, this is good. Again, a pleasure for interviewing a player that know what they're doing. Obviously, yes. In the beginning, 70% of your decks contained blue, roughly 65, 70%. Then it started dropping off, and you started drafting green the most. And I think here comes your period when you were drafting most black. And especially here, this looks like the lizards were played like 60% of the time. So, and then later part of the format, here, you sort of were drafting everything at the same rate. And I also see it very often. I think that these are the interesting crossover points, like here, when you sort of not as close as the yellow is white. Just like putting white dots is not very productive, so I just put the yellow instead of that, because the white is sort of yellow on the cards. So here you sort of like reevaluate it, and you were drafting everything at the same stage. This is where your mind changes about how to approach the format. You come out of it with the lizard strategy. And here you probably noticed that the lizard strategy was not very good. You were probably more like in squirrels at that time. And that dried out, and you reevaluated. And then
this is raccoons period. Huh? I had a raccoon period as well. I think raccoons are great.
Raccoon period. Very brief one. And yeah, this again is also based on the last 50 games. So there's quite a lot of data on that graph. And unfortunately, because of how I calculated, some of those dots overlap. So you don't see every color everywhere. But
and you don't see me playing every day as well.
We can see your streaming structure. Don't worry, I'll give you a chance to plug it at the end still. But you can see he's a regular streamer, because every day, every dot is related to a date. And you can see the volume of games that you're generating per stream. Because, again, you are only playing Arena when you're streaming, which is amazing that you get a 72% win rate only through streamed games. That's quite mental, I have to say. Although you said it helps you being more focused and not
I think
mindlessly clicking in your bedroom.
I
have that problem when I play alone. I'm just like, they may have something, but I'm just gonna attack whatever.
Yeah, my logic is like, if I can play Magic, might as well stream it, right? And then like, if I'm not gonna play, I'm not gonna stream, and why should I play it offline? It's a good experience, at least for me, while I'm like streaming and talking with people and like trying to figure out things together, not only alone.
As long as you don't think that it's socializing, that's fine.
And I think I get maybe more mad when I'm not streaming as well, to be honest and fair. I think I tilt more when I'm not on stream, and then that's like a bad habit, and like how to fix it is maybe not playing that much off stream as well.
For me, the only solution for tilt was age. I just stopped caring. That's the solution to everything. I just care much less about losing. I don't have anything to prove. That's fine. Although Modern Horizons brought the worst in me, and I did get a couple of like angry fist smashes on the table.
Fair.
So here is this same two graphs. They are perfectly synchronized as well, perfectly-ish synchronized. And we can also see how did this winning and losing correlate to what colors you were playing. So I think that your blue period was also the one when you were winning the least. But it's also linked to the fact that it was early in the format, I guess.
It was mostly open maybe as well, so I was trying it.
You started then gaining the win rate, and I think it peaked during your lizard/squirrel period. And then it started dropping off, and probably that's why we see this reevaluation, and you stabilized it by basically being mainly green drafter at the end part of the format, or at least of the data that I got. Does it make sense?
It does.
So with that, knowing that, we can go to which color combinations you are the most successful with and the least successful with. But before we go into this win rate data, what do you think are the color combinations that you played the most?
I know the least, at least.
Okay, which one?
The least is definitely birds. I think I tried it only once. And the deck,
I think more. Oh, maybe once. Yeah.
I know the deck trophied. I had like triple Night Fisher, and I had the signature rare card, the blue-white one.
Kestrel.
The legendary one, yeah.
Kestrel.
And it was funny to me that the Night Fishers like performed 10 times better than that rare. Because like, as you did say, 4-5 toughness is hard to beat, and like you randomly just like getting fishes out of nowhere. And
but you mean do you mean the signpost, the 3-mana one, the 2/3 flyer?
No, I had one of that. I had like 3 night fishes, the 5-drop, the one that
but I thought that what you meant by the multicolor one, you meant the other 4/5, the Lord of the Birds.
Oh yeah, I had that one and 3 of them. I had like a lot of expensive curve in that deck. But I think, okay, let's think. So I think combination that I play the most, I mean, obviously, looking at the previous graph, it would be squirrels, but I think that would be wrong. I would say I played a decent amount of frogs and lizards, and I didn't play.
Let's go. Let's go before you change your mind. Frogs number 1, lizards number 2, with 61 and 52 games. Then you played like a bunch of the other archetypes, like 31 games with raccoons, with the gruel. 27 with bats, 24 with Demir. You actually played very little squirrels, like just 21 games of squirrels. Maybe because you won all of them, so you never had losses or anything. And like 20 Celestia. So you actually, in this Abzan bunch, you only played like 21 games with squirrels, 20 games with rabbits, and actually bats were your most common Abzan color pair with 27 games.
Interesting.
We're going to go back there. And deep in the back is Azorius with only 13 games.
So how do you look at this when they're like when I'm splashing? Is it like just the main two colors?
I just count the two main colors. Yeah.
Okay, so that would explain blue white.
And I didn't count any 3-color decks, although I'm sure there are some.
Yeah, that would explain the blue white because I had a sick Jeskai deck where I was splashing Ral. I had double Ral.
If you had double Ral and probably one other spell, it would be counted as a 3-color deck then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the simplicity, I don't, if I put like, oh, and I played 2 games with Celeste, with Sultai. Nah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. How do you think those win rates relate? What was your most winning archetype?
I mean, I remember Birds trophying. It is a small sample size, so I guess the win rate would be high. And I did see, I have a good photographic memory.
Damn it!
You did put the next slide. I remember it going up. I mean, to go with the volume, I guess more volume game, the less win rate, I would say. So, I would say white red didn't work for me as much as I would want it to work. Black green, I would say it was good. White green, I would say it was good. Blue white, I remember like the decks I played with trophy.
Okay, so what do you think? Like, which color pairs you were doing not so well with?
Not so well with.
I mean, and by that I mean still good, but just not.
Yeah. I remember some lizards that deck not trophying, which I really want, and I would say a red blue as well. So I would say red blue and maybe black red.
So I kept the same order as the popularity, and I think generally they're all more or less in the same whack. As you can see, white red actually you won 81% of the games with the white red decks, so not terrible. Celestia 80%. Azorius, as you said, small sample size, but 85% of the games won. And lizards actually 79%. So you did really well with lizards, despite not trophying with a deck.
So I guess I did take it really personal, the ones that didn't trophy.
And it might be that, like with lizards, you had a lot of 2-0s. And then you maybe lost some games, but the 2-0s are so much better than 2-1s that you maybe had with more grindy archetypes. I guess that would be my guess.
Yeah, it would make sense, yeah.
And you have like a bunch of things at 70% roughly with Golgari, Izzet, Demir, Gru, and Frogs. What's 69? Nice. And one archetype that was way below your average was, and that you actually played quite a lot, was Bats.
Interesting.
Only 63% win rate with Bats. And we come back to the story of the Moonrise Cleric being undervalued by you. I think that this might have been at least one contributing factor that you were not valuing one of, I think, important cards for that particular archetype.
Could be.
Yeah. So any surprises here for you?
White black, definitely. I would think a bit higher, but no surprises here, I would say, overall. Black green, I would maybe think a bit higher as well.
And I think white red is maybe a bit of a surprise because you said you maybe didn't do as well as you thought, but you actually did really well with white red. And actually, this was also something very surprising I found a couple of days ago. Surprising to me, that sits in the data like 24/7. Well, whenever I can. I found out that for the top players on 17 lands, so the people like with 60% win rates on best of one on average, not in the first 2 weeks, but after the first 2 weeks when the format stabilized, Boros was actually the highest win rate archetype. Not by much. Not by much, but it was actually the top archetype. It was very close. I think that this format was a bit out of whack for the first 2 weeks when people were figuring out what to do. But after people figured out what is good, especially for the good players, the win rate differences between different color pairs were very small. So it was a pretty balanced format in general, which is nice because that means that you cannot always draft Azorius, but if you find a lane, it can be a good deck. And you're a perfect example. You only drafted it once, but it trophied because you identified the right lane. And but
the white red maybe in best one, I mean, thinking it now, would maybe have to do with the, I guess, hand smoother helping a bit. and like the key cards are like cheap stuff. So if
and
you're
also
gonna
red was more open. So like late in the
Mhm.
format, you could get those trash the town or the trash the take out the trash.
Take
Sorry,
out the
not
trash,
yeah,
yeah.
trash the town. Different story. Um, that was the combat trick from OTJ, I think. +2, 2+1 counters, draw 2 cards, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the red being open was benefiting it, and finding as white is slightly open, red is always open. You can get a decent white red deck. Okay, so we can move to the card win rates, and I'm going to look at 2 different win rate data. One is going to be games played win rate, so how well did the card do while it was in your deck. Of course, the problem with that is that the fact that the card is in your deck doesn't mean much, but it still tells you something, because by looking at which card had the highest game played win rate, you may sort of figure out which type of decks you were building in each particular color combination, or what kind of strategies were more beneficial for you. So we're going to look first for that. So what do you think? Which cards had the highest win rate when they were in your deck?
When we're in my deck, not
in your deck. Yeah.
GP is game played, or
yeah, games played.
So when I play the cards, what
no. When you have them in your deck, which means that roughly half of those games you never drew that card, because on average you draw a card 50% of the time whenever you play it in your deck.
I would maybe think the +2/+2 laser trick is a card that I really grow to like, even in non-lizard decks, and how like it did impact when you used it, and like how it does destroy green decks, because like when they use the fight brawl, you just get like a 2 for, like, you gain life and they lose a creature, maybe even a fish. So I would maybe say that, just being in the deck. And let's try to get one more, maybe brawl again, maybe brawl, I don't know. Let's see.
Look at that. Huskburster Swarm. That's why I put the card on the cover, because you won 92% of the games where it was in your deck. And it was not a small sample size also. It was like, I think 26 games, and you won 25 of them or something.
Wow.
Or 24 of them. I think that was the exact numbers. So this is your most winning card. Thistledown Players, which is the 3/3 mouse. Also 90% of the games when it was in your deck, you won.
Interesting.
And I think Huskburster. And by the way, I tried to Google this card, but every single time I wrote Hulkbuster, and that's something totally different. I think that this card is specific because
you need to build your deck.
Yeah, exactly. Even though you play it in your deck, having it in your deck sort of indicates what type of deck it was. I'm assuming bunch of cash grabs, lots of creatures.
Actually, I played it in the Rakdos. I remember even one match I won because I had a red talent, and that one is a crazy one if you double strike haste. I remember racing with them because like you have early stuff, and like your creatures are 1, 2, 3, and like that's again a good top end, because like if you're gonna attack and you are the one that is putting a beat down, they're gonna trade. If they're trading, your card gets to be cheaper. And
that's a good tech. I didn't think about putting it in my lizard deck, just because the top end of after the curve out, it will cost you like 4 or 5 mana, which is good.
Which is good enough, and it keeps on putting the pressure. So it works freaking amazingly with the indestructible trick. Like they're not able on blocking it in the first place. If they're blocking later on, you're just gonna gain free life. Players make sense to me. I mean, every time I play it, it's in the Valiant deck, so it does what a deck wants to do. The Cutthroat is a 3/2 lizard, right?
That's the one that grows, can get menace, the hybrid one. Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. I mean, just being in the deck.
You did well with the lizards. That's probably it, basically.
And the duo is which one? Which
the 3/2, the expand one, the raccoon.
I played it in a lot of red decks, so that would make sense to me as well. I mean, in the decks where you're either doing Valiant or you're just okay with getting a pump and like trying to push more damage, Swordmaster, amazing card. I really love it when you can make it work.
Never played it, I have to say. Not for the lack of trying. I just never got the.
It's a sick card if you're picking banners high, because
I am picking banner. Yesterday's draft that I played on the FNM. Guess what was my pick one pack one?
banner.
It was the banner, obviously, and I picked it over the Barrowguard Mentor because I say I'm more likely that I'm going to play a creature deck than that I'm going to play a green white deck. So banner it was, and in the end I ended in birds with it. Never drew it, unfortunately.
And Overprotect, okay. I mean, nothing to talk about that card in any green deck. It works. Mentor is the green-white one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean...
Thought Shocker. That's the 1/3 that you can put a counter on if you have Threshold.
Well, I find it good because it blocks a lot of random stuff early in the game. Because, like, it hoses, for example, the 2/1 first strike Raccoon. You cannot pass it. And... usually when the stats matter, I like the cards in a way that, like, I was even boarding it in, for example, which I mentioned, the 2/1 first strike. I see that one, I'm carrying everything that does have 2 toughness because I want to block early on. And the ability of it isn't the worst, especially if you're flickering the rat. Like, you're getting free draws and other stuff. So a bit surprised that it is this high, but I don't think the card is...
It is when it was in a deck, so maybe that's the reason.
Maybe
it was in the games that you sideboarded. If you sideboarded it often, it would be in the deck and it would count.
I did sideboard it a lot because, like, one thing that, like, let's see, my coach, even though he wasn't a coach, one thing that he told me to remember every time I'm playing a game of Magic. Now, I guess you don't need to remember because you can just click a button and look at the board and, like, check the cards. But it is like power and toughness because, like, especially in the sets like this, where there is a lot of attacks and a lot of blocks, boarding in correct toughness is actually a huge thing. And, like, the example which I mentioned like 3 times already, but, like, there are more examples of it, like even boarding in a 3/4, like a mouse that doesn't, you never ever trigger it because it's good on the blocks and they actually have to spend a removal, a trick or whatever, or they're gonna have hard time. You just boarding it in, it will do a lot in your deck because you all of a sudden, by just, like, checking the average power and toughness of their attacks or whatever, and you're just adding something in to help in future, it helps out a lot. So I'm not, like, surprised I play the Snacker a lot because I try to, like, board in, check that power toughness as well sometimes.
So I guess the Light Shield Duo is the Thought Shocker, but for frog decks that are filled with 3/3s.
Which is the Light Shield Duo?
That's the 3/4 prowess.
Oh, that one is actually not the worst because it helps with the surveil when you're putting cards in the graveyard, and it actually attacks really great as well while blocking amazingly. But yeah, Blast is a bit surprised. I actually hate the Blast.
But maybe it again. It doesn't mean that the card was good. It just means that whenever it was in the deck, you did pretty well. I think that the most important here is the Huskburster Swarm. That this is actually a powerful build around, and you, I guess, figured out how to use it really, really well because 92% of the games. That's pretty impressive. Now let's go to the cards that didn't do so well when they were in your deck, which means that decks with those cards were not doing amazingly. And again, these are the cards that I think had at least 10 games, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
it had to. It was not like one-offs. Yeah.
It's hard to think. Okay, definitely some cards in black and white, I would guess, because win rate was a bit low with it. I would maybe think the 1/1 bunny not bunny, mouse. Is it a mouse or is it duo?
It's a duo. The one that taps for +1/+1.
Yeah, maybe I included in more decks than I should have. And trying to think more which cards I over. Maybe the flyer 3/3 that flickers.
All right, let's go and check. I actually don't know because, as you know, I was rushing those graphs in the last second. So Runaway Together was your worst card in the decks. Just 46% win rate when you had it in your deck. And that, comes together with I guess Simic being slightly below your average win rate. Not by much, but slightly. Then we have the Starseer Mentor, the 5/3/5 bat.
Okay.
And actually the guard mouse at only 56.5.
Which is the guard mouse? The 3/4?
The 3/4, the one that has a Valiant first strike and scry and +1/+0.
I'm sad to see the wick here.
And aren't you sad to see Hivespine Wolverine at 58% win rate?
Oh, this is like a classical debate that I have with my chat. Early on, I was hating the card because I was looking this at synergistic and like this is a powerful single card that doesn't do anything with your deck. But later on, I started putting it more in my deck because it usually has a target and it doesn't really need to have a synergy because like it does more. But I think it has to do with something that early on in the set where I was like including it and not liking how it's a standalone do nothing for your deck, but just for the match in the current spot.
I think that you're partially right in why the black cards are going to be on the list, because you have the Starseer Mentor, Sonar Strike, the 4 damage that you gain 3 life when you have a bat is also on the list, and Waxwayne Witness, the 2/4 vigilance, is also on that list. So something to, I guess
they were missing a 2/3 2/3 flyer to attack with.
You just had a hole in your card. You had the 4-drop, you had the 2-drop, you had the 5-drop, but the 3-drop was the essential.
The 3-drop was missing, yeah.
Bonebite Orator also on the list, 62%. So it's like not terrible. And again, keep in mind these are the win rates when they are only in your deck, so it doesn't tell much.
Orator is the black one.
The 2/2 that you can exile from your graveyard to return something.
Interesting.
And then we have the actual more important data of what was the win rate when you actually had the card in your hand at some stage of the game. And I don't look whether it was opening hand or later in the game. I just look whenever you drew it, what was the win rate. So what do you think is the top card?
Does it start with a B and is a banner? I think it would be there. And maybe a 1/1 lizard, I would say. That one, I think every time I curved out with lizards and banner, it was really sick. Getting a 1 mana.
Again, it's not only on the opening hand. It's whenever
whenever I did draw it, yeah. Maybe the +2/+0 trick, lifelink.
As you can see, there's not that much of a difference in the first 2 cards from the previous graph.
Wow.
It's still the Huskburster Swarm. Whenever you drew it, you won. That was it. You draw an 8-drop and you win. That's as simple as. That's the strategy.
Interesting.
And the second place, as you can see, is the Thistledown Players. The 3/3 mouse. And very close behind it, you got the Junkblade Bruiser. That's the 5-mana Gruul hybrid. And I think that here it might have something to do with the sizing, sideboard sizing, and putting it in whenever you said, okay, this thing, they never go through that.
Yeah.
And indeed, 90% of the time you were right, because they got like 90% game in hand win rate for you. And again, these are small sample sizes.
Yeah.
So you treat it with a pinch of salt. What we have further is the Daggerfang Duo. That's the Death Toucher with that mills you. Heartfire Hero, the 1/1 mouse that grows. Treat Up Sentries, 88% win rate on Treat Up Sentries. That is to 4 reach that forages to draw a card. A Dowerport Mage. You didn't do that amazingly with the frogs, but Dowerport Mage seems to be doing pretty well, like 87.5% win rate. So probably, like, I look at this number and I'm guessing you played it in 16 games and you won 14 of them. Just would be my guess. And same with Wix Patrol. So the 5/3 mills.
There is the scales. Okay, at least one card I did.
And then you got Scales of Shale and Fell. A lot of black cards on that list, to be fair. Because you have the Swarm, you have the Daggerfang Duo, you have the Wix Patrol, Scales of Shale, Fell. So a bunch of those black cards were successful for you in your decks. And a bits and bobs from other things. I guess Treetop Sentry might be another card that you use your sideboarding strategy.
I think in most of the decks I mainboard that card. One thing that George did mention when we were like talking in like a private Discord is that like when you're like looking at, let's say, a skilled player and then like an average player, the longer the game goes, the odds of like a skilled player is more likely to win because there are more decisions and you can shine. And like a lot of these cards here kind of say that to me. Like a Sentry is a card that is dirtly, right? It's a 2/4. It will not attack. It will be defensive, and it will give you a card. Like Fell, good removal. Vic Patrol, a 6-drop. You gotta get to the 6. Port Mage, you're not gonna be aggressive with it. You're gonna try to milk it. Like you're gonna block, bounce a creature, stuff like that. But the interesting to me is that there is a decent amount of aggressive cards here that seems like they were doing way better than I would anticipate. Like players is definitely interesting to me. Swarm, I would say not. I think when you drop the Swarm, you're most likely either ahead or like it will put a lot of pain on the opponent. But the players 90%. I would have not expected this.
Yeah, just one comment about the length of the game, because you're of course right that the longer the game lasts, if there is a skill disproportion, it's going to be advantaging the better player. But there is a second effect in there, because I did some data on that. And it's also like the longer the game lasts, the more likely it is that you're playing against a player with similar skill level to you.
Oh, really?
Because if you're playing against a weak player who will make mistakes, you're probably going to win that game earlier because they are going to make mistakes and you're going to win. So there is those two factors fighting against each other. And I actually observed that in very long games, the win rate tends to go towards 50-50 and best of one. Because if you play a long game, you're probably playing against another good grinder. Because weaker player would already make mistakes that will cost them the game if there is like disproportion in skill level.
That is true, actually. It makes perfect sense.
It's very interesting to try to figure out what is, especially because when I look at the data, I don't know the win rate of the opponent. I can just guess. But I think that this is the core sort of picture that we come out from the data that weaker players will not hold a long game against a better player because it will most of the time end. Which is exactly according to what you said. It's just that because how the cards are designed, it's not going to last forever because they are going to make something wrong. So it's going to end probably like between 10 and 14 turns. And if you go like beyond those 14 turns, these games are on parity in terms of win rate when you look at the 17 lands players. Some cool graphs there, but not a subject to this one. Right, and this was actually the last graph that we had. Oh no, we have last one. The cards that even when you draw them are not winning as much as the other ones. Which cards did you never manage to make work? And I'm going in blind, so I can't even give you hints.
I mean, fair amount of my banners were destroyed. But I guess it's still a really high win rate that would not be here.
No, I don't think banners will be in the low win rate. They're probably, somewhere in the...
So we're looking at like 15% and less win rate cards, right?
They will probably have still like 55 to 63% win rate, I guess, because you don't lose that often.
I don't know. This is hard. I don't have anything on my mind that.
I mean, I don't see a graph, but I would still be probably guessing that Runaway Together will be somewhere there. On
yeah. But I'm not gonna mention cards like that were already. I'm trying to like figure out if there is something that wasn't like shown. But yeah, Runaway Together, maybe some black-white cards, maybe Sonal Strike again, something like that.
There's Runaway Together. 40% when you had it in your hand.
There is a Sonal Strike as well.
There is a Sonal Strike.
The 3 Root Fever, okay.
That's
there we go.
Yeah,
the Mana Dog that I picked a lot, but it seems like it wasn't really that great at the end.
Cram and get it. That's a big surprise for me. Only 58% win rate you had when you drew Cram and get it.
It's the 1 mana trick.
Yeah, the +2/+2.
I'm surprised with that as well.
And this is the kind of the thing that you get from your personal data. Those surprises, I think, are important because I'm pretty sure you will end this format thinking that card was great and it worked for me. But actually, when you look at the results, it didn't.
Mentor makes sense to me. I think I did
That's
have
the Is It one.
Yeah, the problem with the mentor for me was I had a lot of them. Like when you're drafting them, I had a decks where you have 3, and I think the issue with me was not. I should have not included all 3. I think there is like a diminishing return on them. So
yeah, because your spells cost 1, but the problem is having spells.
Yeah.
I mean, the main spell that you want to have with them is anyway the Pearls of Wisdom.
Yeah,
and that already costs 1 with 1 copy.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that one makes sense. And it's an awful card, like Mentor on the blocks and stuff. Crumble and Get It, I'm still like a lot of surprise. I think I did win a decent. I mean, like, of course, data says different, but
yeah, this is the thing. Memory is a funny thing.
Yeah.
Because when you win with it, it feels great. But when you don't win it, you probably don't even register it.
Long River Lurker. That's interesting.
The 2/3.
The 2/3, the word one. Yeah, that's interesting as well. And
it was
what
really
is
good in my birds deck yesterday.
I mean, did you ever see the Long River Lurker with a 3/3 Sentinel? If you're ever having a board stare, that's a great way of breaking it. You play the Lurker, give the Sentinel unblockable, you attack with a Sentinel, flicker it, bounce the Lurker, you go next turn. And then you can keep on like attacking like that. It's a good way of like breaking a board stare and making opponent have a removal and the game ending.
Oh yes, yesterday I was doing things like that, but with the 3/4 frog that puts 3 stun counters. I splashed it into my Azorius deck, and I was having like Lurker, attack with the 3/4, put 3 stun counters on your guy. Next turn, play the Swan. I will flicker my 3/4.
Wait, you didn't put you didn't put the counters on your creature to draw 2 cards?
I'm not into value. I'm into killing.
You're into killing, killing more done.
And a couple of cards that were there before. Whisker Quill Scribe. We saw some of the white-red cards doing really well for you, but Whisker Quill Scribe is doing pretty badly. So, really big difference between Thistledown players and Heartfire Hero and the poor Whisker Quill Scribe. That's the Ramage Mouse, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that one I played in more red decks than it wasn't only in red white. If I had like
just a 2-drop sort of,
it was a good 2-drop for me, yeah, and it worked really well with the land. The one that for one another red mana it can give +1. It gives you looting in later parts of the game, so it gives some flexibility as a 2-drop. And like when you have like a random removals like the I don't know the first part, but I know it's a Gnaw or No, however you pronounce it. It works well with that one. Like you get a random draw discard while you're using a removal spell. So I was including it in a decent amount of decks that were red.
It was the rabbit No,
yeah. The chat was teaching me how you pronounce that word because we as Serbian we read as it is written, and it is Gno. There is a G. And I asked them like, okay, that's cool. Thank you for like teaching me how to pronounce.
Why do you put letters if you don't pronounce them later?
And I was like, okay, can anybody explain me why you don't pronounce the G? And then nobody could. So yeah.
All right. So that was officially the last graph, but we still have conclusions because it wouldn't be a data seminar without the conclusions. So how do you find this kind of introspective? Is it informative? Were there some cringe moments for you, or was it anytime uncomfortable?
No, not uncomfortable, not cringy. Informative, yes. I found it. I mean, I think a lot of this data, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be able on finding on my own, like on 17 lands. Maybe I would if I would know where to look. But like, for example, I would not know that I'm like not valuing the 2/3 that highly. Maybe since you did say it, a creature that keeps on attacking after turn 4. that's like something that like will ring the bell next time. Even not playing it in the black white, I have seen a lot of people just putting it in any white or any black deck,
And I
because
can tell you that at least like looking at the cursory win rates, they did not do that well with that. It was like, so much better in white black than in any other deck. But
yeah,
you can put it, of course.
But I did see a decent amount of matches where they were doing that, and I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense, but it keeps on attacking, right? So it's like it's maybe still good enough. So that was definitely interesting part on like figuring out those cards, and I guess the ones that you mentioned, the one that did have a high win rate cards, and so I did find it like interesting, and like it was interesting to see the trend the way I was drafting as well early on. Like if you would ask me, I would maybe think that as well. Early on, low win rate, high. Later on, it keeps on growing, and then maybe later on, it like stays as a line or whatever.
Yeah, but still good to actually know it for sure, because there's no discussion with the actual data.
or with the Twitch chat, because I'm only playing with my chat. maybe I should like pay somebody in my chat to track the data.
Yeah, exactly. Your official Whisker Squills scribe.
They're not gonna miss a match. It's on live. But yeah.
So, are there any other types of data that you would be interested in learning about yourself?
Let's see. I would love to know, I guess, when it comes to competitive Magic, I guess something that has to do with the arena opens, direct challenge, and other stuff. Like maybe how much does my approach variant from those type of events? Like I don't know, like some cards that I'm always playing in best of 3, or I'm always first picking. Maybe I didn't take it on the arena open, or I was like looking at some things differently, because maybe like you're maybe not thinking about this, but maybe your subconscious is. So maybe
it would be just hard with the sample size, I'm afraid. With
yeah,
that kind of stuff, because
that
arena opens are only that many.
Yeah,
maybe if we could take the box tournaments and compare your box tournaments versus your MH3 normal drafts.
I do have those data as well. I think I have around. I think I had a crazy win rate. I mean, I can find a picture. I think I had. I mean, easy to check 17 lines, right? But no, not this. I think I had around 50 less drafts. No, 50 less entries in the Modern Horizon 3, and I had like a really crazy win rate.
Well, yeah, if you had 50 entries and you won 14 boxes, that's pretty good, because normally people had to place
25 boxes, I think. Let me see.
Oh, 25? My God.
So it is 61 events, and I did win 25 boxes. Match win rate 74, game win rate 74.1. But I guess matches and the games are the same.
Yeah, it's best of one. So yeah. But 74 in best of one is...
It was like a lot of variance as well.
Not healthy. I mean, yeah, it's also, those things are not ranked, so you will be matched with players who are like in gold.
Exactly, yeah. So I think like if you're playing ranked, it should go like close to 50, maybe a bit up, or like 60, I guess, for good players.
Yeah, I mean 65 is exceptional.
Yeah,
68 is like Ekil.
And 70 would be Novak Djokovic playing.
Oh, there you go. There goes the Serbian.
Joking.
You mean Yannick Sinner?
Yeah.
Well, you know, at least Djokovic is the last one of the golden generation that can still hold a racket.
True. But yeah, I don't know if nothing comes on my mind at the moment about what more. I mean, this was pretty cool, to be fair. I usually like jump on your stream when you're in the middle, and it's hard for me to figure out what's happening. But now when I did go from beginning to the end, because it was with me, I really like this. And I guess if there is like maybe episodes with other people on YouTube, I guess you're uploading there, I will check out other people for sure.
Yeah, I have. As I said, there was last one was Paul Chion, there were a couple of. I mean, there's a bunch of other ones. I have Numot, I have Sam Black, Corticals. So yeah, there's a couple of those. So it will be interesting. I also have the one with Pasta Pirate.
Awesome.
Wilds of Eldraine. Pasta Pirate famously 90% of his drafts were red-black.
Really?
90%. And we're talking about
he has like
900 games with red-black and 200 with the rest of the stuff.
Wow.
And this shows like the whole range of what can you do in limited. He unabashedly told me, if I saw a card that goes in the rats, I'm drafting rats. And that's what he did. That was incredible to see that data, because it's a whole different world from your strategy, like the polar opposite. So it's interesting to see from that perspective even. All right. Well, where can we find you and when can we find you?
So you can definitely find me at the Draft Lab Discord, where other content creators, Draft Lab members, the 4, TJ, Florida Man, Iki, Josh, are there as well. So Draft Lab Discord definitely, and you can definitely find me on my Twitch, Ekil TV. I mean,
I'll put the links in the descriptions for the YouTube and for the podcast, so that you can worry about it.
They're definitely, usually, and now lately depends on how busy I am with the other like personal stuff, but I'm trying to like do at least 3 times a week stream, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as you did see on the dot as well. 3 days
quite easily,
quite easily, yeah. But yeah, usually you can find me there.
What times are you streaming on?
I'm streaming at like close to 1 p.m. CST, and I'm like trying to go 3 drafts per stream. So sometimes I end in like 4 hours, sometimes I end in 5 hours, depending on how fast the set is, how fast the decks are, and all.
So like, that's like starting 6 a.m. New York time and ending roughly 11.
Yeah, I would say like something like that.
So usually afternoon in Europe, morning in America.
Exactly. Usually Europeans, I think, are watching me. I'm not like 100% like how my viewer, like where are the more people that are watching me, but I would think a lot of Germans are watching me and maybe Italians, but yeah.
I know both of my viewers.
Oh, you do?
All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me, man.
No problem, but that's my benefit, not yours. I always like to get people with a very interesting approach to drafting, and I have to say I'm blessed by getting most of them that I wanted. So that's amazing. Yeah, good luck in Duskmore. It does look interesting. So I'm sure that you're going to figure it out very quickly. And with that, thanks to my patrons, thanks to the 17 Lands teams, especially thanks to Viral Misnomer for getting the data of Ekil to me and in his absolutely packed agenda. But thanks to everyone. Thanks to Fake Jake Brown for releasing it in the podcast version for me. And Esescu, Mana Junkie, for the music I'm using. And with that, I'll see you in exactly 3 days when I'm be here with Alex Corticals, and we'll be going through our Bloomsboro set review. Yes, you heard me right. We're going through Bloomsboro set review because that's what we do. We don't release the set review, but we grade every card. And then after the set is finished, we look at our evaluations and we tell you what we got wrong. And usually it's a lot, especially when it comes to me, not to Alex. So we're going to see which cards we missed and why, and try to figure out how to improve our card evaluation for the next set based on the mistakes we did this time. And that will happen in 3 days. See you then.